Whenever you are trying to prove to someone that the earth is flat, you can usually tell within the first 5 minutes if they are going to be willing to accept this and do their own independent research, or if they are going to completely shut down and call you a retard. To weed these types of people out, I usually ask the person if they believe 9/11 happened the way that the news reported it, and if they say yes, then I typically end the conversation there. Call it biased if you want. I've just gotten really good over the years at being able to tell who is intelligent and who is moronic. There's one person, however, that I can't quite seem to figure out, and that would be our president, Donald Trump. I've already learned and shared with my viewers that every president appears to be selected by the unwanted shadow government that rules over us, and that every president we've ever had, with the exception of one, is somehow related. Trump has even made his way into the deck of the very good at predicting things Illuminati card game that was made in 1995. This card reads, "At any time, at any place, our snipers can drop you. Have a nice day." Indicates that he might actually be on our side. Then you also have his thoughts on the World Trade Centers.
Well, it was an architectural defect. You know, the World Trade Center was always known as a very, very strong building. Don't forget, that took a big bomb in the basement. Now, the basement is the most vulnerable place because that's your foundation. And it withstood that. And I got to see that area about 3 or 4 days after it took place because one of my structural engineers actually took me for a tour because he did the building. And I said, I can't believe it. The building was standing solid and half of the columns were blown out. I mean, so this was an unbelievably powerful building. If you know anything about structure, it was one of the first buildings that was built from the outside. The steel, the reason the World Trade Center had such narrow windows is that in between all the windows you had the steel on the outside. So you had the steel on the outside of the building. That's why when I first looked, and you had big, heavy I-beams, when I first looked at it, I couldn't believe it because there was a hole in the steel. And this is steel that was, you remember the width of the windows in the World Trade Center, folks. I think you know, if you were ever up there, they were quite narrow. And in between was this heavy steel. I said, how could a plane, even a 767 or 747 or whatever it might have been, how could it possibly go through the steel?
Trump has even gone as far as to tweet about the earth being flat. But there was an article published on Halloween in the year 2016 that all the mainstream sites claimed to be a joke. For the longest time I've wondered if he actually believed that the earth is flat. But now upon further research, it's become very clear to me that Donald Trump knows damn well that the earth is flat. But the only question that remains is, does he want us to know as well?
Space station, and has now spent an incredible 665 days in space. You'll have to explain that. That sounds tough.
665 days? Really?
More than any other American, more than any woman ever. Finally, we're honored to be joined by Apollo astronaut Jack Schmitt.
The reason why Trump took a deep breath there is because, in my opinion, he's not honored at all to have that man there. In Revelation, the king of the bottomless pit, Abyss, is directly named Abaddon, in the Hebrew meaning the destroyer, and Apollyon in Greek also meaning the destroyer. Apollyon is one of the spellings of the Greek god Apollo. The devil is also the destroyer.
Exactly 45 years ago, almost to the minute, Jack became one of the last Americans to land on the moon. Today we pledge that he will not be the last, and I suspect we'll be finding other places to land in addition to the moon. What do you think, Jack? Where's Jack? What do you think, Jack? We'll find some other places out there? There are a couple of other places, right?
Now right here, Trump is clearly being sarcastic by saying that there's a couple other places out there.
We'll learn. The directive I'm signing today will refocus America's space program on human exploration and discovery. It marks an important step in returning American astronauts to the moon for the first time since 1972 for long-term exploration and use. This time, we will not only plant our flag and leave our footprint, we will establish a foundation for an eventual mission to Mars.
Anyone who has researched NASA and the ridiculous pictures of Mars knows that they are really just pictures of Greenland with a red tint on them. So again, I feel like Trump is being very sarcastic here too.
This is very exciting and very important for our country.
So as Trump goes to sign this bill, he's got sitting on the table next to him what appears to be a glass dome. Is this just another example of truth hidden in plain sight? Or is he letting us know that he's well aware that the Earth is a flat, enclosed plane?
And it also happens to mean jobs. Jobs. And we love jobs too, right? Absolutely. Congratulations. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Good. I like it. Thank you very much, everybody.
After Trump signs this bill, someone gave him an astronaut action figure, and Trump promptly sets it face down on the table and holds it there. And the man to the left of him points to the dome, and you can't make out what he says, but you can hear Trump say, "Good."
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Good. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Good.
Now, over the last few days, I've made 3 videos where I've went down the list of evidence that scientists have given us to prove that the Earth is a spinning ball in outer space. I found that it was very easy to prove that gravity doesn't actually exist, and it was even easier to prove that NASA is a bunch of lying assholes that just want to get into our wallets. Then I showed all of you that the flight routes that these airline planes take only make sense on the flat Earth map. That, oh by the way, the United Nations uses as their logo. I also made it quite clear that I don't think every pilot is in on this deception, but they are merely being fooled right along with us. Because no matter how high you seem to go, there is no curve. I also proved that satellites don't exist based on the temperature of the thermosphere alone. Then I showed you that boats don't actually disappear behind the curvature of the Earth because, well, there is no curvature of the Earth. The boat only appears to be going over the horizon, but it's only due to your perspective. Then I proved that for rainbows to be possible, there has to be some sort of mirror, which is actually the giant glass dome, over our heads. That the government, no matter how hard they try, can't seem to break. And I'll take that a step further. They say that the Earth is something like 4.5 billion years old, and they also say that a meteor shower killed off all of the dinosaurs. That's to say, if you even believe those things existed. But what are the chances that meteors took these giant creatures out, but we've never had to deal with giant fiery rocks falling onto our heads? Is it perhaps because we are shielded by God's firmament, aka the dome? And after I proved that we are surrounded by a dome, then it was easy to disprove the claims of the star trails in the southern hemisphere. Now I could continue on with this and talk about how the sun and the moon are smaller than we were taught, and they are also not as far away as we were taught. And that's how you get your day and your night. And I could also show you the numerous videos floating around where someone is filming an eclipse, and then they turn their camera to see the sun setting. But no matter how many round earth proofs you debunk, you still have someone wondering, why are they lying? Well, I think it's quite simple, really. Because at the end of the day, the shadow government, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, they want to push their agenda forward, and they want to disarm us. No matter how many fake shootings our government does, or how many real attacks on American people that our government does, they know that it'll never be enough to get everyone to give up our guns. It's been in the works for a while now. They are planning to say that the aliens are here and that they want our guns. I mean, really, it probably sounds stupid, but it's what they are trying to do. And with that being said, if the whole world knew that we were trapped in this dome on this flat plane, then we'd also know that there's no way any aliens are going to be coming to Earth.
Many years ago, in fact, 1972, I was sitting at my desk at about 4:30 in the morning at the headquarters of the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Fleet, arranging the information that had come in over the last 24 hours into a logical order so that we could prepare a briefing for the Admiral and his staff, which would take place later that morning. Among the papers I found on my desk was a document entitled Operation Majority, and it was not the entire paperwork involving this operation, but was merely a synopsis of the operation and projects contained under it. One of these projects was called Project Red Light. The purpose, according to this document, was to back-engineer captured extraterrestrial technology for adaptation into the United States space program. Now, I have since come to believe that the extraterrestrial portion of all of this is nonsense, but that the technology is real. I believe that many of us were shown these documents over the years so that later we would talk about it. I mean, how can you keep the existence of extraterrestrials, if they were real, a secret? And how could anyone keep quiet knowing that they had seen documentation, official government documents labeled top secret, that expressed that these extraterrestrials were real and had visited this Earth? I wanted to know just how true all of this was, and I began a program of research to find out if extraterrestrials were real. The first thing I did was collect every bit of documentation that I could find, both from the Freedom of Information Act, from the research of others, from books that had been printed on the subject of UFOs, and of course through my network of friends in the intelligence community. What I discovered was amazing. What I discovered, ladies and gentlemen, is that there has been a plan in existence since about 1917, and probably before that, to create an artificial extraterrestrial threat to this Earth in order to create a one-world totalitarian socialist government. One of the first documents that I found in my search was this one, the Imperial Japanese Mission 1917, a record of the reception throughout the United States of the special mission headed by Viscount Ishii. And when the Imperial Japanese Mission was in New York City, they had a dinner, and some pretty famous people spoke at this dinner. One of them was John Dewey. John Dewey is the father of our failing, disastrous public education system. Here's what he said. Listen very carefully. John Dewey, professor of philosophy in Columbia University, who was the next speaker, was listened to with great intentness. He said, quote, "Someone remarked that the best way to unite all the nations on this globe would be an attack from some other planet. In the face of such an alien enemy, people would respond with a sense of their unity of interest and purpose." Unquote. Now, bear in mind, folks, that's 1917. One of the next documents that I found, and I found quite a few, but one that's pretty important, is called the Report from Iron Mountain, the probability and desirability of permanent peace. Now, I encourage you to find this book, wherever you can find it. I don't know where you can get it, but find it. Page 66. Credibility, in fact, lies at the heart of the problem of developing a political substitute for war. This is where the space race proposals, in many ways so well suited as economic substitutes for war, fall short. The most ambitious and unrealistic space project cannot of itself generate a believable external menace. It has been hotly argued that such a menace would offer the last best hope of peace, etc., by uniting mankind against the danger of destruction by creatures from other planets or from outer space. Experiments have been proposed to test the credibility of an out-of-our-world invasion threat. And it continues on another page. Nevertheless, an effective political substitute for war would require alternate enemies, some of which might seem equally far-fetched in the context of the current war system. It may be, for instance, that gross pollution of the environment can eventually replace the possibility of mass destruction by nuclear weapons as the principal substitute for war. Are you beginning to get the message, folks? Poisoning of the air and of the principal sources of food and water supply is already well advanced, and at first glance would seem promising in this respect. It constitutes a threat that can be dealt with only through social organization and political power. But from present indications, it will be a generation to a generation and a half before environmental pollution, however severe, will be sufficiently menacing on a global scale to offer a possible basis for a solution. However unlikely some of the possible alternate enemies we have mentioned may seem, we must emphasize that one must be found of credible quality and magnitude if a transition to peace is ever to come about without social disintegration. It is more probable, in our judgment, that such a threat will have to be invented rather than developed from unknown conditions. Ladies and gentlemen, they have created so many alternate enemies in order to bring about their one-world totalitarian socialist state that we don't know which enemy to believe is real or is false, or whether to just toss them all out on their ears. And I think that that is probably going to be the best solution. Disarmament is no accident. All of these bills in Congress to take away our weapons is no accident. The intentional environmental pollution of our lakes, rivers, streams, oceans, forests, everything is no accident, as you just heard. These things were planned many, many years ago. All the bombardment of the public with movies about flying saucers in the 50s, right after the United Nations Treaty was signed and the UN Participation Act was pushed through Congress, and all of the incidents since that have convinced the majority of the American people that flying saucers are real and extraterrestrials exist, and that flying saucers are from an extraterrestrial origin. This is being promulgated in many ways, by television commercials, in the movies, in the newspapers, by creating incidents either real or imagined. I believe, because of my research and because of the extensive documentation that I've found and that is in my book, that this whole scenario has been created to give us an artificial alien threat from outer space. During the Reagan administration, he made 6 speeches, specifically talked about a threat from outer space by some other species from some other planet. 6, ladies and gentlemen. Why would the president repeat the same thing 6 times, tagged on to the ends of speeches by him? The speechwriters did not put that in the speech. Ronald Reagan added it himself.
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This was a powerful suggestion to implant into the minds of the people of the world that there really is a threat from some other species, from some other planet to this earth. Now, you people out there have been ignoring the UFO phenomenon for too long. It has all the earmarks of the most successful, most sophisticated mind control operation in the history of the world, and you are ignoring it. What better way to implement a plan to bring about a one-world government than to create the possibility in the minds of the people of the world that we are being threatened from some other species, from some other planet, and do it in a way that if anybody questions it or challenged it or wants to talk about it publicly, that they are ridiculed.
You've seen pictures of the planet, though, right? Like it's a circle. So
I've seen a lot of things that that my educational system has said that was real and turned out to be completely fake. So, I don't mind going against the grain in terms of my thoughts.
What a dumb motherfucker!
That if anybody questions it or challenged it or wants to talk about it publicly, that they are ridiculed.
For me, and then I come out and say that, and then, whoo, the reaction it got.
Yeah, because people think maybe your brain collapsed, or think maybe your brain collapsed, or think maybe your brain collapsed.
That if anybody questions it or challenged it or wants to talk about it publicly, that they are ridiculed.
What did you make of the Kyrie stuff?
I don't. It's true.
What?
The Earth is flat.
Shaq, what are you talking about?
The Earth is flat.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No,
listen,
it's not.
There's 3 ways to manipulate the mind: what you read, what you see, and what you hear.
Okay.
Conspiracies.
In school, first thing they teach us is, oh, Columbus discovered America. But when he got there, it was some fair-skinned people with the long hair smoking out of peace pipes. So what does that tell you? Columbus didn't discover America.
Yeah, he found where some other people already lived.
I drive from coast to coast, and this is flat to me. I'm just saying.
Okay, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
I drive from
It's
Florida.
the dumbest thing you've ever said.
I drive from Florida to California all the time, and it's flat to me.
92 podcasts, and that's the dumbest thing you've ever said. That's a high bar to get over. Okay, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said. Okay, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
That if anybody questions it or challenged it or wants to talk about it publicly, that they are ridiculed.